Some killers, they make it easier for police. They leave behind fingerprints, DNA, maybe a weapon. But what about the really terrifying ones? The ones that leave behind absolutely nothing. Nothing but a ghost, a kind of psychological echo of their darkest fantasies played out in the real world. So that begs the question, how do you hunt a monster you can't even see?
Yeah, that's the big one, isn't it? That's the question that kept law enforcement up at night for decades. When you've got zero physical clues, you have to find another way in. You can't hunt them on the streets, you have to hunt them inside their own twisted minds. And the story of how they figured that out, well, it starts in probably the last place you'd ever expect.
Okay, so when you think of criminal profiling, you probably picture some high-tech lab, right? Big screens, lots of data. But the real story? It starts somewhere the FBI literally wanted to bury. I'm not kidding. We're talking 1972. The FBI's most groundbreaking revolutionary idea was born in a literal basement, 60 feet underground. While the big shot G-men upstairs were busy chasing bank robbers and mob bosses, a small misfit team got shoved into a windowless bunker at Quantico. And what they were doing, this psychological profiling thing, the old guard thought it was a total joke. They called it voodoo, fringe nonsense. They basically told them to stop wasting everyone's time. But these guys had this one core belief that changed everything. They believe that a crime scene is basically a projection of the killer's personality. Think of it like a psychological fingerprint. They argued that the why of a crime is just as real, just as measurable as the how. Every single choice a killer makes, who they pick, where they do it, what weapon they use, even how they leave the body, it all tells a story. Was it a surprise attack, or did they chat with the victim first? Was the scene a total mess, or was it wiped clean? These aren't just random details, they're like little postcards from the killer's mind. So, okay, great theory. But to turn it from an idea into an actual weapon against these guys, the basement pioneers knew they couldn't just sit around and guess. They had to go straight to the source. And that meant doing something nobody had really done before. To understand the monster, they had to sit right across the table from it. Agents like John Douglas and Robert Ressler went on this tour of America's worst prisons. They spent hours, and I mean hours, talking to men like Edmund Kemper, the co-ed killer. This guy was a giant with a genius IQ who would just calmly explain how he went from fantasy to actual murder. He even told them how he'd practiced by picking up hitchhikers and then letting them go, just to see if he could get away with it. These unbelievably chilling interviews, all tape-recorded, they became the world's first ever database of the homicidal mind. And out of all that data, they pulled one of their most powerful tools. It's the whole organized versus disorganized killer idea. It's actually pretty simple. If you find a crime scene that's clean, controlled, methodical, that points to an organized killer. This is someone who's probably intelligent, socially competent, someone who plans their hunt. But if the scene is a total wreck, chaotic, messy, that suggests a disorganized killer, someone impulsive, socially awkward, who probably lives or works really close by. Suddenly, the crime scene itself is telling you exactly who to start looking for. It's brilliant. This led them to another huge breakthrough, the difference between an MO and a signature. The MO, or modus operandi, that's just the how. It's the method, and it's practical. It can change. A guy might use a knife one time, then switch to a gun because it's more efficient. But the signature is different. That's the ritual. It's not about what the killer does to commit the crime, it's what they need to do for themselves psychologically. It's about their fantasy. And that never changes. It's the invisible string that lets profilers tie together cases that happened years, even decades apart. And a big part of that signature is often taking a trophy. And look, this is not just a souvenir like you'd get on vacation. It's more like a psychological battery. The killer takes a driver's license or a piece of jewelry or something much worse, so they can relive the crime over and over again. It recharges their violent fantasy. It's a completely chilling psychological need, but here's the thing. It's also a huge weakness. Because a killer can clean a crime scene perfectly, but they almost never, ever have the strength to get rid of that trophy. So, armed with all these new tools, our basement profilers were about to get called up to the big leagues. America's most infamous cases were about to become their trial by fire. Take the Atlanta child murders in the early 80s. The city was a powder keg, ready to explode. Black children were vanishing, and everyone thought it had to be the KPK. But then profiler John Douglas drops a bombshell of a profile. He says the killer isn't white, he's a black male. People were outraged. But his logic was simple and honestly powerful. He said, look, In the segregated Atlanta of that time, a white guy driving through black neighborhoods trying to snatch kids would stick out like a sore thumb. He'd be noticed instantly. The killer had to be someone who could just blend in. And you know what? He was right. That profile helped lead them to Wayne Williams and basically put the BSU on the map for good.
Then you have a case like the BTK Strangler. This guy, Dennis Rader, terrorized Wichita, Kansas. He'd bind, torture, and kill his victims. He even sent these arrogant, taunting letters to the media. And then, poof, he vanished, just went completely silent.
Not for a year or two, for 27 years. A whole generation grew up. The case went ice cold. I mean, most people just figured he was dead or maybe in prison for something totally different. But the profilers? They never closed the file because they had a theory.
Their whole theory was based on his psychology. They said, look, a guy with this kind of massive ego, this intense narcissism, his need for attention is more powerful than his need to stay free. They literally predicted that one day he would pop back up. Not because he needed to kill again, but because he couldn't stand the thought of being forgotten.
And then, in 2004, it happened. They were proven right. He starts sending letters again, craving that media spotlight. And then, he makes his fatal mistake. He asks the police a simple question. Hey, if I send you a floppy disk, can you trace it? The police just straight up lied. They said, nope, no way. He sent it. And the metadata on that disk, it led them right to a guy named Dennis Rader, a local church council president. After nearly 3 decades, his own ego got him caught. You know, the BTK case is an amazing example of how powerful understanding a killer's mind can be. But it also helps us just completely demolish one of the biggest, most dangerous myths out there about these guys. I mean, pop culture loves the evil genius, right? We've all seen it. The suave, brilliant mastermind, the Hannibal Lecter type who's always playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. But the reality, the one based on decades of actual data from real profilers, it's so much more unremarkable. The truth is, frankly, kind of pathetic. The real profile isn't a supervillain, it's a social failure. Get this, one big study found the average IQ for a serial killer is about 94.5, which is actually a little below average. Their neighbors don't describe them as charismatic. They say they're quiet or a bit weird. The reason they get away with it for so long isn't because they're geniuses. It's usually just dumb luck or because they prey on vulnerable people who won't be missed right away. So this entire field started in a basement, basically running on human gut instinct. But where it's going next, well, its future might belong to the cold hard logic of a machine. We are absolutely entering the age of the algorithmic profiler. We're talking about artificial intelligence that can crunch data from tens of thousands of crime scenes in the same time it would take a person to read through a single case file. It can spot tiny patterns, connect cases across countries, stuff a human brain could just never see. And it does it all without any human bias. And this basically sets up the ultimate showdown. In one corner, you've got the AI profiler with its insane ability to process big data. And in the other corner, you have human instinct, the human profiler who can understand the things a machine just can't. You know, the irrationality of trauma, the weird, specific details of a killer's fantasy, and just the human cost of it all. So that leaves us with one last big question. As we go forward, what's it going to be? To hunt the monsters that walk among us, do we need the flawless, cold logic of an algorithm, or do we need the flawed, empathetic, but totally irreplaceable human soul? What do you think?